When it was announced that we were going to be getting a third live-action incarnation of the Batman in less than 20 years, I was a bit skeptical. You have to remember, at the time, the DCEU was completely floundering, and any attempt to make a DC movie property since The Dark Knight Rises pretty much just fell flat on its face, with maybe the exception of Wonder Woman. But even then, that one had issues that a lot of people were quick to point out. And I gotta be honest, I really wasn't looking forward to just seeing it, because I was burned out on superheroes, I was burned out on Batman, and that was heartbreaking to me because Batman is one of my all-time favorite fictional characters. I have so many of his comics. The Long Halloween is one of my favorite literary works ever. And so, yeah, I guess you could say it was getting pretty serious. I'm Matt Kime, and for the first time in what feels like half a year, I'm doing a full stop review. So I'm going to be doing two sections of this review. There's going to be a non-spoiler section. I'm going to have like a little separator and I'll put time codes in there, and there's going to be a spoiler section. So it's your own damn fault if you get into the wrong section, is what I'm saying. The movie's only been out for a week as of the time of this recording. So yeah. But like I said, if you find yourself in the spoiler section after all this, it's your own damn fault. So written by Matt Reeves and written by Reeves and Peter Craig, this movie takes a lot from some of the classic Batman stories. So Year One, The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and then Batman Ego and Other Tales. So those are some of the, especially Long Halloween and Year One, are some of the more core Batman stories to how we currently understand the character in a modern sense. The Dark Knight took from Long Halloween and Man Who Laughs. Batman Begins took from Year One. We just had an animated adaptation of Long Halloween. The Harvey Dent story in The Dark Knight is basically Long Halloween, and so we keep seeing this story over and over and over again. But this movie is also, if David Fincher directed a Batman movie, this is kind of what it would look like. As someone who loves the movie Seven, and Zodiac for this matter as well, this movie's a lot more focused on the detective side of what Batman is as a character, and I really appreciated that, because a lot of times we're seeing his action capabilities or just kind of his god mode. I can beat anything because I'm Batman, I'm more prepared than you, but you don't always see his epithet in the comics is the world's greatest detective, and it gets to the point where Ra's al Ghul doesn't even call him Batman, he calls him the detective. Batman Bruce Wayne is probably one of the smartest people alive, and you get to see some of that in action. So that was a very nice angle to take, because you don't always get to see it. You see the crazy depressed side of Bruce Wayne, the traumatized side, and believe me, there's enough of that here as well, but you see the intellectual side of the character as well, and that was very rewarding to see, because we've seen this character so many damn times that it's just finding something new is always to be commended. With that matter, the movie doesn't have the Waynes dying, and I don't think I could have taken another Thomas and Martha Wayne death. It happened in Joker, it happened in Gotham, it happened in Batman Begins, you see it in the Zack Snyder verse. It's just, there's only so many times we can see it before honestly it just becomes kind of funny, and this movie avoids that trap. So this movie is, at its heart, a detective story. It's set in a very, very grimy version of Gotham that's more or less New York City, even down to the point where there's a Gotham Square Garden. Yeah, guess what that one's based off of. But the movie doesn't really feel like New York outside of nods like that. In the movie Seven, the city that it takes place in is kind of this nameless entity. It could be anywhere, but it just kind of feels alive. I know it's a bit cliche to say that the setting or the city is a character, but the Gotham just oozes malice in every frame. It oozes corruption. It's just, there's something almost creepy and sentient in this movie. So for example, the first shot you see in this movie is someone being stalked through a sniper scope. So you're seeing from the perspective of the sniper scope, and it just gives you the feeling that you can never quite put your guard down. And so the movie kind of gets you as the viewer on edge, but it also gives the impression that within the city, something malicious is always watching you. And it's very much to this movie's credit, because it's kind of a manhunt for a serial killer is what this movie, the first probably 2 hours of this movie is about. And so they're hunting the Riddler. By the way, Paul Dano gives a great performance, and one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is that it doesn't make the Riddler another version of the Joker. The Riddler's always been a super fascinating character, but a lot of iterations of the character kind of just have him playing as like a sort of second fiddle Joker in a different costume, and they go in a very, very, very different direction with that. Without getting too spoiler heavy, because I'm not in that section of the review yet, the main inspiration for this character was the Zodiac killer, down to the point where it's the character's even wearing the same kind of glasses. I could wax poetic for hours about this movie. I think it gets so much right. I think Robert Pattinson, who I honestly believe has been a super underrated actor, especially if you saw him in Good Time or The Lighthouse, he has been one of the more underrated actors of the last 10 years, and I'm so happy that he is kind of getting the shine, the spotlight that he is now. Not that he wasn't before, but I feel like for mainstream audiences, people just kind of know him as Edward Cullen, and he has done so much good work since then, and I'm happy he's being recognized for it. Zoe Kravitz kills it as Catwoman. Jeffrey Wright is great as Captain Gordon, and Andy Serkis is a very different kind of Alfred than Michael Caine. He's a lot more... I don't know that badass would be the word, but it's a very different dynamic, and it's, again, the not necessarily originality, but just more that it's a fresh on-screen take of the dynamic that I very much appreciated. This movie gets a lot right. You do kind of feel the length towards the end of it, I'm not going to lie. I'd say certain things in the third act feel a little bit disjointed from how the first 2 hours of the movie go, and that's another thing. This movie's long. It's longer than The Dark Knight. It's longer than The Dark Knight Rises. It is longer than every superhero movie ever made, with the exception of Avengers Endgame. So this movie, I feel like the third act kind of, you kind of feel it a little bit, but it's, overall, I'm still going to give this one a green light. If you haven't been able to tell by now, I love this movie. And that's the end of the spoiler-free section. Yeah, don't go any further, but if you do click away, remember to comment and subscribe. Please, Kay, thanks. Alright, if you've made it this far, you've been warned, and like I said, it's your own damn fault. One of the other things I really liked is that it kind of makes sense to me that someone, like a crazy but smart conspiracy theorist, cult leader kind of person, would have A, the personality that the Riddler does, and B, the cult of personality that the Riddler does in this movie. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too influenced by real world events, but it feels entirely plausible that he could get a group of followers crazy enough to go through with the plot that they do at the end of this movie. It feels very, very, like, almost uncomfortably realistic. It kind of gives a nice foil to Batman, because one of the big themes is whether or not he's actually making a difference, and whether or not his approach is the right one. Should I even be doing this at all? Or am I just making things worse? Am I just inspiring crazier people than me? And so you have the Riddler doing the same thing, but intentionally inspiring violence and hatred and destruction, where Batman is trying to, he realizes at the end he has to inspire hope. So one of the things I actually really love about this movie is the music. The music takes a lot of cues from, like, The Shining, to the point where they're using the same composer, Christoph Penderecki, who had pieces used for The Shining. So there's one piece in particular, Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima, which may be one of the creepiest pieces of music ever composed. I'm not lying. I'm going to play it for you now. I'm sorry if you're listening to this on headphones. 3, 2, 1. There's a lot of, like, percussive dissonance to the soundtrack, and if you've watched some of my other reviews, like, so, for example, my Come and See review, you'll notice that I love it when movies use this kind of soundtrack, because it is so unsettling, it's so creepy. And like I said, Gotham is just, this movie rarely takes place at daytime, and like one of the, I think, 3 daylight scenes happens when it's like gray and overcast and about to rain. So there's not a lot of very bright lights in the sky. So, like, the movie's color scheme is more or less a sliding scale of red, gray, and black for huge portions of it. The music is just unsettling. You just kind of feel the city decaying And the whole theme of the movie is the corruption of the society and how Batman as a character has to reckon with his parents' role in that. And that's one of the things I liked, is because they took notes from The Long Halloween and Dark Victory and an anecdote where Thomas Wayne saves Carmine Falcone's life, and then they went in a slightly different direction that they do in The Long Halloween. So a lot of things that they do in The Long Halloween, they do here, sans the Two-Face arc. So it's Batman taking down the mob and the city getting more chaotic as a result as it progresses. So one of the big themes of this movie is he's on this crusade, and he's beginning to realize that it's not working, and he doesn't know why. One of the other things about this that I liked from The Long Halloween is the Catwoman storyline. Now, I think Catwoman has been a super underrated character in the Bat canon, insofar as a character like that can be underrated, I guess, but I think she gets used to really good effect here, and I think Zoe Kravitz does an amazing job. They use a plot point that not every iteration of the character even touches, which is the relation to Carmine Falcone, which is one of the big twists in Dark Victory. So I think that going there gives the movie gives the whole world of the story another level of depth, all the interconnectedness between the characters. And there's a subplot about how Martha Wayne was a member of the Arkham family, and that's not the case in most of the canons, at least I don't think. Fact check me on that, I might be wrong. This universe feels so connected and so well built and so woven together that the Riddler's main ambition, trying to unravel all of that, it's a cool plot to watch. Now, I thought that the third act, with some of the Riddler followers attacking everybody in the city, getting flooded, I thought some of that felt a little bit, okay, this is a comic book movie at the end of the day. We needed a comic book style third act, because some of it doesn't quite gel with the tone of a serial killer Jigsaw style manhunt that goes on for the first 2 hours of this movie. So I thought the first 2 hours of the movie were by far and away the most interesting, because part of it is you're hunting for a villain who's kind of like a mixture of John Doe from Seven, Jigsaw from Saw, and the Zodiac, because I mean, god, they even give him the same glasses. And I really like the Riddler, and there's a conversation that's kind of like a sort of callback to the interrogation scene in The Dark Knight, but it's a very different dynamic. And so the movie is very aware of where it comes from. So there's a scene where he's escaping from the cops, and he uses his grappling gun to get lifted through a stairwell, and it's kind of reminiscent of Batman Begins and again Year One. So a lot of these stories are taken from the same source, so they're very aware, but they don't beat you over the head with references, with the exception of the Joker scene at the end. And well, in fairness, the character isn't credited as the Joker, but we all know damn well who that's supposed to be. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of tired of seeing the Joker. I love that character, and Joaquin Phoenix was amazing, Heath Ledger was amazing, Jack Nicholson did, enough. One of the things I've always loved about Batman is that he has probably the most diverse rogues gallery out of any superhero, with the exception of maybe Spider-Man, and so there's a lot of fascinating characters, and you don't always have to go back to the same one, especially when, it just feels like it's getting stale. Now, the producers of this movie, apparently there's going to be 3 movies in this series. They've been a bit coy about whether or not that is the Joker, or whether or not that's the direction they're going to go in. So TBD, I suppose. One of my criticisms of the film is that I don't know that you get to know Bruce Wayne all that much. And now this is very much a deliberate choice on this movie's part, so this might just be, it just didn't land with me personally, but you see Bruce Wayne out of costume for maybe 10 minutes of a 3-hour movie. He's Batman probably about 90% of the time, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but part of the issue is that there's secrets that go, like, a lot of the twists of the movie have to do with Bruce Wayne's family, his motivations for being Batman. And I'm not saying we need to see the Playboy Batman, because this Batman has a lot more in common with Kurt Cobain, because that was the inspiration for this iteration of the character, to the point where you have Something in the Way playing at both the beginning and the ends of this film. There's a couple sections in this movie where they have to rely on narrated voiceover exposition, and I don't know, maybe I just saw that how it should have ended of Spider-Man 3.
But what if I need to tell the audience something about...
No narrating!
It's not a huge issue. It doesn't drag the movie down. It's still a green light for me, but I felt like it was a bit clunky with some of that stuff at certain points. Like, there was so much that they had to fit in the movie that some of the character side of it kind of got left on the wayside. Now, granted, at the end of the day, this is a noir detective story, and the noir detective story is done really well. There's a really great scene of the Riddler involving kidnapping one of his victims, and there's a couple of moments that's almost a shot-for-shot recreation of one of the kills in the original Halloween movie. Now, I don't have footage from The Batman, but here's the scene in Halloween. So like I said, this movie does a lot of things right. You just sort of feel the length at the end, and I think the characters could have been a bit stronger, or at least the Batman Bruce Wayne character, because you don't ever kind of feel the emotional stakes for him at certain points, with the exception of his family. But that stuff doesn't come in until so late in the movie that it's, like I said, I just think the personal stakes could have been stronger. But one of the things I love about that Halloween detail is that, again, the movie starts on Halloween. It's based on the long Halloween. There's a shot-for-shot nod to Halloween. This movie has a lot of fun, like, little details if you squint at them. And so that's one of the joyful things about seeing this movie. And for as much as I was complaining about the length, I never once checked my phone. I never once checked my watch. I never once got up from the seat because I couldn't look away. I really can't wait to see what they have in store in this universe. I really, really hope they continue with it. I love Robert Pattinson in this role. I love Zoe Kravitz in this role. I hope she comes back. Maybe it's just because I'm a Batcat shipper at heart, but I think that, I mean, you know, she goes off and does her own thing at the end, but that's kind of always how the Catwoman character is handled. Jeffrey Wright was great as Gordon, and I'm really, really curious to see what they do next. So once again, it's a green light for me. Anyways, I could talk about this movie for hours. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, or if you hate my face, don't do any of those things. But if you hate my face, why are you even at the end of this video to begin with? If you like what I have to say, I have another full stop review coming out in probably about a month from now. It'll be my top 10 videos of 2021. Number 8 will shock you. My friends are also doing some great work as well. Check out some of the tabletop stuff we're doing. We got some more fun stuff on that on the way. Maybe this time I won't get killed. Return of the Movie will be coming back. The podcast will be slightly different than how we have traditionally done it, and we're kind of excited to try a new direction with it out. But in the meantime, it's good to be back.